Thanks for joining us for this Las Cruces Municipal Election Forum. I'm Fred Martino, Director of Content for KRWG. We're hosting today's forum with the League of Women Voters of Greater Las Cruces. And it's just that, a forum, a chance for us to hear candidate views on a variety of issues. We ask the candidates to stick to their positions and refrain from mentioning their opponent. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question. Today, Las Cruces City Council District 3, and we welcome candidates Bev Courtney and Gabe Vasquez. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, Fred. Glad to be here.
It's great to have you with us. And I'd also like to welcome Erica Graff Webster from the League. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you.
And she has our first question.
And the first question goes to Bev. How important is the downtown to the economy of Las Cruces? How much should the city council be spending downtown, including the expenses of tax deferments?
Well, not being intimately acquainted with it, it seems to me that they should cooperate with business, because businesses ultimately are what's going to be renting down there and making it successful and bringing the people to come and either eat dinner or, have a pub, have music. And that's what I think they need to do, is just cooperate.
Well, that's a great question, because if we drive by downtown Las Cruces, we see the development that's been happening there for several years now. I served on the board of the Downtown Las Cruces Partnership for several years before the plaza was designed. In fact, we were just as a board and as a community talking about what we wanted our downtown to be. We wanted it to be a place that was good for families, good for business, had walkability, and that restored some of the culture that once was downtown before urban revitalization in the 1970s. And so I think the city is doing it right with a private-public partnership that it's entered into with some different entities here locally, and by attracting investments, not just from the outside, but from local entrepreneurs and small business owners who want to relocate to downtown. I think they have to create an atmosphere that makes it conducive for local people to prosper with their small businesses, but also for outside investors to come in and make sure that downtown is a success.
Okay, Gabe, we'll begin with you for this next question. What are the 3 most important issues facing Las Cruces in the next 5 years?
Okay, definitely economic development, and I think economic development and poverty are tied together. So I'll put both of those in one category. Education is really, really important for the future of the next generation here and for our workforce in the future. And also child welfare and healthcare, which I also put together, because without healthy families and healthy children, we don't have healthy outcomes for our people here. So in terms of poverty, we've never really gone out of the recession here in Las Cruces. It started here late in 2009 versus 2007 like it did for most other parts of the country. And since then, our employment levels have pretty much stayed stagnant. And so we're not in a terrible place, but we're not in a great place, and we haven't gotten out of the recession yet. And that's why we see so many more people, obviously, that can't find the quality jobs that they need to move their families forward. So that's critically important to me, but also watching things like the SNAP enrollment, which is a really good teller of economic sustainability amongst our families, is really important.
Okay. Bev?
Well, obviously the unemployment rate has been rising for at least the last 5 years. And we have the highest unemployment in the state, and the state has the highest unemployment in the nation. So that needs to change. That needs to change, because when the people are prospering, then they can provide for their families and, pursue the finer things in life instead of just struggling to make ends meet. So they need to get rid of the red tape so that businesses can come in and have a chance to make it past the first 5 years. They just get bogged down. Like, there's a hospital that wants to come into the old country club, and 4 years trying to get past the permits and all of the disagreements. If we could come to terms of agreement, that would be great.
Okay.
With businesses.
Thank you.
Okay, next question to Bev. The Animal Services of Mesilla Valley is a joint venture between the city and the county. What can the city do to improve the administration of this? What should be its short and long-term goals?
Well, I've seen the sign in town that talks about how many animals are killed, and that's just heartbreaking. I don't know if the spay program is going to be that much more expensive than, sheltering them and having to put them to sleep. It's heartbreaking. So I think if they just put the money up front and try to be about prevention, it would be so much better. And educate the public. They're doing a pretty good job of it, but they need to reach the people that, a lot of times it's people that don't have resources to provide for their families and stuff, so they don't spend the money on their pets that requires. So,
Gabe?
Really important issue, and sad to see the leadership at the animal shelter has left. Dr. Beth Vesco-Mock, I think she was a strong proponent of educating the community about responsible pet ownership, which I think is critical. And that, coupled with programs like the Spay and Neuter program, which is a nonprofit program, along with a consistent city and county policy in terms of what they want that shelter to be in the future. So I think other cities have moved to no-kill shelters, which is very difficult to do, especially in communities like Las Cruces where poverty is high. You tend to have, I think, more stray animals. And so education is really key. And so what I'd like to see the city and the county do is get together to find out how they're promoting responsible pet ownership policies, what they can do as far as unified codes to make sure that animals aren't being abused. And also to see, dig into the books and see how money is being spent at the shelter and how maybe it could be reallocated or how it could be improved in certain areas. So I think that's really important.
Gabe, what are 3 quality of life factors in Las Cruces that you would act, if elected, to maintain or achieve?
Well, certainly I think that access to recreational spaces for families is really, really important. As we talk about our young families that are growing up here, maybe are graduating from the university and want to stay here in Las Cruces, some of the things that they look for, and I spent some time actually on campus several weeks ago talking to students here about what would make you stay in Las Cruces. One of the things they said is places for us to recreate. So when we start a family here, we want to have parks, we want to have things that improve our physical health. So that's a really important quality of life activities, making sure that we have the parks and the recreational services that help families succeed. Another thing that I'm also really passionate about for young people as well is quality of life means having the walkability of a city and a neighborhood to go shopping, to go eating, to hang out with friends. And so we need to increase the connectivity between our city corridors. And then lastly, I would just say that certainly jobs. I mean, jobs translate to quality of life, and so we need better jobs.
Okay. Bev?
could you repeat the question?
Yes. 3 quality of life factors in Las Cruces that, if elected, you'd act to maintain or achieve.
Well, it's like Gabe said, jobs, they translate into less security issues because if people are working, they're not idle and they're not desperate, so they can provide for their families and have money to recreate. One thing that affects everybody is the traffic. Everyone, maybe even 10 years ago, used to boast that, hey, you could get anywhere in town 5 minutes. The city is kind of behind the times. They should, in my opinion, finish the infrastructure. They have disagreements with builders and stuff out there, like on Roadrunner, Engler, but a bypass. Every city that's growing, they have to have bypasses, and it frees up traffic in the city. So if you were on the East Mesa, you could get to the West Mesa, and you can bring businesses out there, and that way it wouldn't tie up like Picacho and those dangerous 70 and I-25 exchange.
Thank you, Bev.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, next question for Bev. Recent studies indicate a need for nearly 5,000 rental and over 4,000 home ownership units. How would you address these needs?
Well, the market would drive it if they could finish the infrastructure. I think that is the problem that I hear about, is that the infrastructure, they don't come to terms of agreement to get you got to have the roads And we have that problem, just like going to the spaceport. I don't know if you've driven to the spaceport, but if you wanted to take trucks with big rockets and space equipment out there, you can't even you have to go across a narrow dam and a winding road. And first things first, so it's priorities. Infrastructure is planned 20 years in advance, then you eliminate a lot of problems. So that's one thing, but they have 10,000 plats ready for builders. So if people wanted to come here, they got to have jobs, and then they would be happy to buy a home. It's, you know, a big marker of success for a family to buy their first house.
Nate?
Well, there's about, from the studies I've read, about room for about 300,000 people here in Las Cruces, considering the current land availability that's available to us. But instead of growing out, I would really like to see us focus more on infill redevelopment, particularly in District 3, because it's in the heart of the city, and we have a lot of low-income areas and blighted areas that, in talking to homeowners, as I'm walking door to door, they say, hey, it'd be great if somebody developed this parcel of land here. It'd be great if we could get some affordable housing here. So not only do we need 10,000 more homes, if that's what the market can provide for and can sustain, but we need affordable properties, because we can't have our local folks here being priced out of the housing market like we've seen in other cities throughout New Mexico, where they're now living on the outskirts in not the greatest conditions. I don't want to name Santa Fe, but I know that's a city that's gone through that with gentrification. And so we need to look to the inner parts of the city to revitalize it using affordable housing and economic development.
Okay, Gabe, describe how you will use facts and opinions to make decisions if you serve on the council.
Thank you. Well, facts are critically important in any position of leadership. And so when you make policy decisions, they have to be based on science, on data, on facts. And I've actually been really pleased with what the city's economic development and community development department has done in trying to restructure some of their staff so that they can provide better guidance to council when policies come before them. So facts critically important. Opinions, well, everybody has opinions about what they want Las Cruces to be. If you ask me, somebody who's been here for 15 years and used to visit here when I was a little kid to fish at Young Pond, I probably have a different idea than what somebody who's maybe just retired here from Minnesota has. But that doesn't mean that my opinion is better or more valuable than anybody else's. So we have to couple what folks want in different parts of town together with what we can do through a data-driven economic development plan that's regional, because I think that's really important, and make our decisions as a council based on those two things.
Bev?
The thing that I see is for example, Gabe talked about infill, and that policy was passed several times, and they just let it lay there. So there's these policies and ordinances in place if we just picked them up and put them into practice, implement them. So I think the other thing is to hear experts and then come to a consensus and agree on a plan of action and then put it into, implement it. In other words, we have it, we just need to implement it. Have a liaison with Chamber of Commerce, with the Bridge of Southern New Mexico, MVEDA, MEVDA. All of those people have researched. So we just need to work with them and find out what works.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Bev, do you support public financing of local elections? Why or why not?
Well, you would have to have public financing. Who would take it upon themselves to finance an election?
I think it's referring to campaigns, correct?
Right.
Oh, well, I think money that comes to a candidate equals support. So that's the voice of the people. So I don't agree with public financing because it helps us. I mean, you can't run a city campaign if you don't have support. So.
But wouldn't public support help?
Maybe if you wanted to run for a bigger office. I don't need to spend much money here personally, but coming to these forums like you have done is great. It helps us get our voice out. And it does take some amount of money, but they might do matching. I haven't looked into it enough. So I'm just kind of guessing off the top of my head.
Nate?
Well, big money and certainly dark money, as many people refer to it in New Mexico, has been an issue for many years, and that's probably why New Mexico is considered, a corrupt state in that sense, and has been for many years. But here at the local level, until just recently, where we saw some super PACs from some other political entities enter municipal races, I probably didn't see a need for public financing. And I think now, when we want to give every candidate that can get those signatures on a ballot the opportunity to finance a campaign and run a campaign fairly and evenly with other candidates, I think that's something that the city should consider. And I think it's something that obviously needs some education out in the community in terms of how resources are used, what public financing is used for. But I know Albuquerque has done it successfully and generated what I thought was some pretty good candidates in their municipal election. Granted, we're a lot smaller, but I think it's something that we could look at.
Gabe, if elected to the city council, please identify and describe your most important constituents.
That's a tough question. Every constituent is important, and I'm sure you probably knew that was going to be the answer. But the constituents that I would probably, they always say the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Right? And when I was working constituent services for Senator Heinrich, the ones that called, the ones that wrote in, the ones that came into the office and had a problem, whether it was with the VA, or with Social Security, or with HUD, those were the folks that we helped right away. So certainly the folks that bring issues to my attention, whether it's a street that's in disrepair, whether it's a street light that's not on their particular street and is causing public safety issues, or for any other reason, those that come to my attention will be the ones that obviously are important in that immediate time. And so I would encourage folks to contact their elected officials at all levels when they have issues with federal or local agencies, or simply want to bounce ideas around, because that's another thing that I think is great about being an elected leader, is you get to hear the ideas from everybody in the community.
Bev?
Well, I felt like our district has been neglected. So I raised my kids and have lived in that district for a long, long time, and I know the neighborhood. And you can't pick and choose who to listen to. That's what I want to do, is listen to the people, and I want to speak up for them, because I don't feel like that any of my concerns were listened to. And about the red tape, they can make rules and regs to silence your voice. And I feel like everybody has a right to have a voice, whether they have money or they don't have money, that they have a right to be heard. If they're paying taxes, they're equal. Everybody gets equal treatment under American system, which is great. I love that. So that's what I want to do. And I feel like we need equal representation on the city council.
Okay.
You know, conservative, liberal, both
Thank you.
parties.
Thank you, Bev.
Okay, Bev. What could the city council do to encourage the residents to vote and become more engaged in community issues?
Well, I think talking to them face to face has been the very best thing. You can put notices in the newspaper, but there's so many different demographics, like the radio station. The women listen to this one, the young men listen to that one, the oldies but goodies listen to this one. So a friend of mine has been attending where the counselor goes and has a community meeting, and I understand those are pretty popular, so I will probably copy that and do that fairly often. And they've got my phone number already, so I'm going to have an open door policy.
Gabe?
Well, I think engaging constituents when they are available, as Ms. Courtney said, not everybody has the same availability or listens to the same or tunes into the same mediums all the time, but I think the City Council's taken the right step in agreeing to host off-site City Council meetings on select Mondays after working hours, because that gives your working person or family an opportunity to at least go and voice their concerns during the public comment period, or if there's a particular agenda item that's of interest to them, they can do that, and they're holding it in different places around town. So I commend the City Council for doing that. But beyond that, in terms of voter engagement, a lot of that falls on the county clerk. And so the county clerk really has a job to increase votership in the county. And I think the county clerk has done a great job, as have his staff, from what I've seen, in trying to do that in the last several months. And so I think that's a right step. But as a community, I don't think the city has all the answers. I think we have to create a culture of voting here that not just the city has a responsibility of doing.
Okay. Gabe, there have been, as you know, requests by some to block the increase in the Las Cruces minimum wage to $10.10 an hour in 2019. If elected, how would you vote on this issue if it came before you, and why?
Thank you. Well, I was actually a proponent of increasing the minimum wage when the campaign first started. Since I was in college, I've worked a bunch of minimum wage jobs here in this city, and I've worked alongside women who were 65, 70 years old, who have held either manual labor or low-skilled jobs their whole lives. And so one of the narratives that I saw from the opposition of the minimum wage increase was that, well, only teenagers need it, and you shouldn't get paid that much to sweep or to flip a burger. Minimum wage is much more complex than just those two different parallels that we want to draw. Now that we have the data to look at the impacts that they've had to small businesses, and the city council has agreed to review them, it's imperative that we look at that data and we look at that effect, and that we make a judgment that's the best judgment based on what the data says about how it affects our local small businesses. More so than just what minimum wage has an impact on our local economy, we need to figure out how to make local small businesses succeed overall, and the minimum wage is just a part of that.
Bev?
Would you mind repeating the question?
Yes, there have been requests by some to block the increase in the Las Cruces minimum wage to $10.10 an hour in 2019. If elected and it came before you, how would you vote on the issue, and why?
Well, I think the people that are against it are the people that are paying the wages. I think it creates unnecessary class warfare, because in American capitalism, and it's very important for those workers to have an incentive to leave the minimum wage job and make improvements in their own life, their own knowledge, their own skill, and move up the ladder. The other thing is we have this really high unemployment rate. As of July, it was 7.7%. So the minimum wage will not matter if there are no jobs. And the other thing that is the outcome of that is a higher unemployment, because in order to meet their overhead, businesses will not hire as many people, or they will cut their hours. And then on top of that, everything else goes up. I don't know if you noticed that lunch costs more than it used to just a few years ago.
Thank you.
Okay, Bev, how important are the arts in Las Cruces, and how much taxpayer money should be expended by the city to support the arts?
Well, I love art. I love the arts. It's a great inspirational. We have inspirational landscape. I don't think we should spend any tax money except maybe in the public schools and let them have art and music. I think that's where it should be. And I understand they don't offer like they did when I was in elementary school. So, and then the college offers art classes. So I don't see why we would need taxpayer money for it. It seems to come naturally. If you want to paint something or draw something, you go get your art pencils, your watercolors, you start out small, and if it's good, you continue on. The market will help you.
Gabe?
Well, one of the things I've been telling my friends when I first wanted to run, and since then people at the doors and other constituents, is that since I've lived here, I felt like Las Cruces always needed a stronger identity. I said Las Cruces is a town it's really beautiful in its own ways, but it doesn't know what it wants to be sometimes. And I think public art can help us define the character and the culture of a city. So you see the statues that are commissioned to different public spaces like Brandon Cultural Center or the Memorial Library right behind it, that actually increase our quality of life, that give us an identity. And so I would love to get a group of local artists together from all different cultures, for indigenous, Hispanic, Mexican American, cowboy culture, to come up with some sort of comprehensive public art plan that the city could build on so that we can actually make Las Cruces a cultural destination for tourism. It can help with job creation and with neighborhood revitalization. I mean, I can see a bunch of public art corridors in District 3 that would really enrich those places.
We've reached our final question of the night and we're a little over on time. Gabe, we'll begin with you. What two personal characteristics make you most qualified to serve on the Las Cruces City Council?
Well, I think I have vision, and I think that last question we were just talking about, what does Las Cruces want to be in 10 years or in 20 years? I have vision, and I have, I think, a very positive disposition in terms of where I want the city to go. So I have a plan, and I want to bring the city council and the mayor together and our respective departments in our communities to actually have a comprehensive vision and not just be a reactionary to when policies come up or when we're voting against this. So, and that involves the creation of small businesses, that involves better jobs for people, that involves trying to improve our child welfare and community policing so that we all have a better Las Cruces. And then secondly, I have experience. And so I've worked in public policy at the federal level, as well as the municipal and the state level for the last 5 or 6 years. And that coupled with working in small businesses, in nonprofits here, and actually as a former journalist where I really got to meet a lot of the community firsthand after graduating from New Mexico State University. That experience from all those different approaches gives me a really balanced outlook on the city of Las Cruces.
Bev?
Well, I think integrity is very important, and I would like to see it at every level of government. And along with integrity is transparency. And then I care about people. I care about the communities. So I think we could just apply some common sense to take care of first things first, the infrastructure, and meet the needs of the older communities and not let them be neglected, or District 5 that they feel like they are neglected out there. But you've got to look at the basic things first, take care of that, and then see where you want to spend. So we just don't end up tax and spend and leaving the people behind, because they just really are barely getting by, especially in District 3.
Bev Courtney, Gabe Vasquez, candidates in Las Cruces Council District 3. Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Erica, thank you for being here, and thank you to the League. I'm Fred Martino. Have a great week.